Let's talk about the Vikings. No, not the Minnesota kind. The real ones. The kind who could burn down your city before breakfast, sell your goat, kidnap your king, and still make it home in time to write a saga about it. No, still not those Minnesota Vikings. Because in 859, a gang of long-haired Scandinavian lunatics decided that raiding Britain, France, and Spain wasn't enough. No, they looked at a map, squinted at the Mediterranean like it was a cruise brochure, and said, "Let's go ruin someone's century." Now, let's set the mood with a quote from the History of the Kings of Norway, written in the 13th century in a language that sounds like you're coughing up a pine cone. Kringla, heimsins, su manfolit, begir. Which means the orb of the world which mankind inhabits. Or in Viking terms, all of this looks pillageable. Penned by Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson, a man with a name that sounds like a sneeze, this saga paints Vikings as brutal, brilliant navigators who treated land like a buffet. These Norsemen went everywhere, west to Britain, north to Greenland, and as far as North America. But when Snorri mentions, quote, that great sea through the Straits of Gibraltar to the land of Jerusalem, you know they were eyeing the Mediterranean with a little glint in their one good eye. Now, here's the twist. Despite popular myth, they didn't call themselves Vikings. The term probably meant something like pirate or bay dweller, so yes, technically they were murderous sea squatters. And no, they didn't wear helmets with horns on them. But why did they start raiding in the first place? Well, it's simple. Scandinavia in the late 700s was overpopulated, under-resourced, and crawling with sons who couldn't inherit land. So instead of getting into real estate, they just got into raiding. They hit England in 793, sacked Lindisfarne, and ruined the monks' day. And by day, I mean century. Then they moved into Ireland, carved up the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and turned Roman ruins like Eboracum into their own cities, like Jorvik, which is modern-day York. They spread eastward too, into Russia. That's right, Russia got its name from the Rus, a Viking tribe. These guys used rivers like highways, sailing down the Volga and the Dnieper to reach Baghdad, the magnificent capital city of the Abbasid Empire. Imagine opening your tent flap in Baghdad and seeing blonde giants yelling in Norse. Yeah, frightening. But if you really want to see the Vikings at their boldest and their dumbest, you need to look south. In 843, they grabbed the island of Noirmoutier and launched assaults on France. In 845, they sailed up the Seine and sacked Paris. Charles the Bald, yes, the Bald, a man who probably had enough stress to lose his hair, he paid him to leave. This became France's foreign policy for the next century. Basically, bribe now and scream later. Then came 859. Enter Bjorn Ironside, which, let's be honest, sounds like a character you unlock after winning a boss fight. Bjorn, possibly the son of Ragnar Lothbrok, or at least a guy with really good PR, teamed up with fellow warlord Heistein. Together, they unleashed what can only be described as a death metal tour through Muslim Spain, southern France, and eventually Italy. According to Spanish historian Ibn Hayyan, writing in 11th century Cordoba, Vikings crashed into Christian northern Spain, terrorized the Basques, and kidnapped their king, Garcia Iñiguez. Then, they demanded a 70,000 dinar ransom, an astronomical amount of money. Muslims called the Vikings al-Majus, the Magi, because they thought that they worship fire like Zoroastrians, which frankly makes sense when you show up everywhere and torch everything. They passed Portugal, burned mosques in Algeciras, raided the southeastern Spanish coast, made a detour to North Africa where they collected slaves they called blue men, and then plundered the Balearic Islands just for good measure. Eventually, they anchored near modern-day Nimes in South France. Spent the winter in Camar, probably because pillaging in sandals is a lot more fun when it's warm. Then came Italy. Oh boy. In 860, they arrived at Luni, a wealthy Roman-founded city near modern La Spezia. And here's where things get both hilarious and wildly sketchy. According to Dudo of San Quentin, a man who took more creative liberties than a Marvel Universe writer, the Vikings mistook Luni for Rome. And since Rome was the jackpot of all jackpots, they wanted in. So they faked Hostein's death. Woe is us, our beloved pagan murderer is converted to Christianity and is now very dead. Can we please bury him in your nice holy city full of riches? And the city Let them in. Look, I know it's the Middle Ages, but maybe don't trust the tearful deathbed conversion of the guy whose job titles were arsonist, looter, and murderer. Anyway, once inside, Hastein popped out of his coffin like Norse Dracula, killed the bishop, opened the gates, and sacked the city, only to find out it wasn't Rome. Wah, wah. Now, historians agree this story is probably nonsense. Dudo wrote this 2 centuries later. Other sources like Saxo Grammaticus and the Saga of Ragnar Lothbrok read like Viking manga. But the overall voyage, it was real. Spanish and Arab sources confirm raids in 1859. A Viking camp was likely in Kamar. North African sources mention destruction in Nakor. And yes, Viking raids reached Pisa and Fiesole around 860. They didn't conquer the Mediterranean, but they sure did make it flinch. And the legacy, surprisingly civilized. The wild men of the north became the Normans. They settled in France, became Christian, learned French, and promptly used their Viking blood to conquer England in 1066. Then they took southern Italy and Sicily from the Byzantines and the Muslims. They left behind beautiful churches, beautiful, intimidating, Viking-influenced churches. So the next time someone tells you the Vikings only cared about axes and mead, remind them, these lunatics once raided Rome. Or they thought they did.